Okay, good afternoon. I'm Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon to try and figure out the future for smarter buildings. So it's really good to have you with us today, either live or recorded later on. If you're wondering who we are, our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org. And also, remember that views expressed here during this call are personal, not of any company or organization. Keep that in mind. And let's make this as interactive as we can with the Zoom chat. It's always better that way. And if you want anything that's on this slide deck, it is also available on mondaylive.org right on the homepage. So head over there if you need anything. So this being the last Monday in February, we are doing a sort of a recap of Las Vegas, the AHR Expo and the ASHRAE Winter Meeting that happened there a couple of weeks back. So this is our kind of last recap of that conversation following that. And so our agenda today is normal chit chat. And then on the Las Vegas rearview mirror sort of perspective, we want to talk about this thing called Do-ocracy, which we'll get to in a minute. It's really about going from talk to action, which I think will be a really good thing for us as a community to do. But before we do that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Ken Sinclair. What's going on, Ken?
Lots of do action for do-ocracy. I think we both got fascinated, or all of us got fascinated on our Wednesday meeting with that word and understanding that that is more or less the backbone of Linux Foundation. And of course, C4SB inherits all of that as they are supporting the Linux Foundation. I think we're crossing over the point that it's almost as easy to do something using AI and cloud technologies as it is to try and convince a bunch of people that we should do something. And the demonstration of what we can create and link them to is basically changing the way we're thinking very rapidly. And so we have this after Vegas, what AI revealed about smarter buildings. That's our summary of last week's Monday Live, and I think it's very much a doing, I guess, of what is going on. And I think generally Monday Live and all of the folks that are band together with it are part of a bureaucracy, and we're actually creating change by demonstrating what it is we're doing, and I think that's a great example. There's links to the Monday Live video, which was good, but the summary does a good job, I think, of just tying down what happened in that hour. We now have our free education sessions online. We've been doing that for 27 years, so I guess we were kind of early to the bureaucracy as well, because we basically saw a need to run free education sessions to try and change opinions and attitudes. And we've been kind of chugging along with that for quite a while. They're now online. We're just starting to move through and provide AI summaries of them, so you don't have to sit down and watch, as it turns in 16 hours of video. On the next one, Platform Wars to Platform Peace, Kimon has done a great job of pulling together a lot of stuff, and I think again the bureaucracy of showing people what it is that the change he wants. Don't just talk about the change, physically show the change, and I think they've done a great job. They basically tied that to the Echelon booth at AHR Vegas. And that was it was great to go to the booth, but actually, in my mind, this summary is better because it actually has all of the players in one place at one time. And at no time did that happen in Vegas. You could wander over to the booth and you'd run into some interesting people and have a good chit chat, but at no one time was everybody there. Plus, they all got their formal presentations together. So this is a great collection and a great change. And moving on to bureaucracy. The actually, Anto has written this institutional substrate governance, and it's a great article. And this whole governance thing is raising its head. And as soon as you start doing stuff, then you have to. It's my thoughts hit reality kind of an effect, and I think it's great to frame a lot of what we're trying to do because it's pretty amazing, but it still has to fit into reality. And I think Anto does a good job of doing that. Our other contributing editor suggests that we look at agent governance, and they suggest that we take a look at self-driving cars. And this is a situation where this thing has had a pretty free thought as to what it can and can't do. But the reality is it has to fit into the reality of the rules of the road and other things that are going on. And so they're suggesting in those articles that we should start looking at agents much the way we look at autonomous cars. Interesting thoughts, I think. Over there is a picture of Steve at Vegas, and he did an interview with Kelly talking about the new old protocol T1L, and I think that was a great discussion, and what it did is it triggered us to do a piece on it, and I think that has been extremely well read. There's a lot of interest in the industry about that. And talking about just sort of stuff from the industry, the bottom one there is Bosch is you've probably been noticing, been buying a lot of HVAC and control companies. This statement just kind of rings in my ear. The company expects the global HVAC market to grow 40% by 2030. That's a huge number. And it says that it's because of climate change, which some people don't believe is happening, but new regulations and just a whole bunch of acquisitions that are going on and the change in the industry. I think the bottom line for that is we're in the right business, and there's going to be an awful lot of good stuff falling on the automated building industry. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. A lot of things as always. Over to you, Rick.
Cool.
Change the slide. Yay.
Yay. How about that? So we're trying to make sure that we're highlighting on the C4SB website some of the linking to the articles that are in automated buildings and the stuff that is being written by Kimon and others to be able to just bring greater attention, because we're seeing more clarity around and more understanding of the messaging of the need for smarter buildings. The next slide, I think, is there we go. A slide that we've been using to try and give a little bit of the track record of what C4SB has been up to and kind of where it's going. And this is a sort of an updated list of the logos and the working group names of the active working groups. We're going into 2026 with a few other working group ideas already formulating, and I had thought that I was going to have a little bit more of a listing of the different working groups and get some potential feedback on some of the other ones, but I didn't get that slide done in time. But just a little bit of a heads up, we had a conversation last Friday about how 231, and for people, if you know what 231P is all about. looks like there will be a working group that is focused on 231 and beyond, how 231 sequence of operations are going to be, how they're going to proliferate and how they're going to affect our industry, and how we definitely want C4SB to be a place where that 231 is happening. Now, whether that's going to be under the existing project as or a whole new one, not for sure. We also want to in the bottom left, the where it says EcoPort, we want to be able to highlight how grid interactive buildings can go sort of beyond EcoPort, beyond open ADR. That'll be another focus of C4SB as we go into 2026. And then the work of the Cloud BIM and how IFCs are becoming more open will be another significant highlight. And then I think the fourth one I wanted to quickly mention, and we'll have a better slide next week, is this technology currently known as UDMI, Universal Device Management Interface. That will also become one way or another a focus of C4SB in the new year. So bringing better definition or better explanation of what the current working groups are, and then also attention to what the new ones are going to be, will be my priority for this week, and hopefully I get it accomplished by next Monday.
Okay, thank you, Rick. So I put up this slide. It's really on governance. I've been thinking a lot on governance over the past 2-3 weeks. A lot of this was motivated by what's happening in agentic AI. As AI agents are now starting to populate the internet significantly and starting to do things and starting to behave on their own, sometimes badly and sometimes really good in unexpected ways. So all of that is sort of happening, and we've talked about that on the past Monday Lives. So I think I strongly believe that governance is sort of a way to think about what we have to do to control all of that, to manage all of this so it doesn't go awry or goes crazy. So as I was sort of doing that, I started thinking about governance more generally and started to think about, where did the concept of governance even started? And obviously it started with this guy here. Plato is his name. He was alive 2,400 years ago. And he's a philosopher, and he's written a number of books. Probably the most famous one is called Republic, which I have read. And really what he was defining is governance. Obviously, he didn't know about AI. He has no idea about what we're talking about today. But the way he was talking about it, he was actually saying, okay, so how do we build a society? So this is 25 years ago. Societies don't exist as they do now, obviously. So how do we build a society that is just, that's virtuous, that doesn't get people to do the wrong thing and sort of encourages people to do the right thing? So his writing is all about that. And his writing is about the sort of the ideal way that governance should be looked at. And we've been trying, obviously, for 2,500 years to implement these thoughts with some mixture of success, right? Obviously, what we have in terms of the global order and everything else, that is part of that for humans. So I'm sort of taking that sort of framing and saying, what would it look like if the future is actually humans and machines, meaning AI, doing stuff? What does the governance of that look like in the context of how Plato was looking at it? So this is what this article is all about. And I think it's a very sort of interesting way to look at this problem from a completely different angle. So I encourage you to take a look at that. I will put the link in post. Do that and just move on to any other thoughts or any other reflections on what Ken, Rick, and I have been presenting.
Some thoughts on your Plato slide if that's okay.
Go ahead. Come on.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. It's very interesting
Your
because
your audio is very tinny.
okay, I'm back. Let me change it.
Sorry.
Can't hear anything now.
You guys can keep going. I'll come back. Let me change my settings.
No,
That
that's
sounds
all right.
That sounds good. Okay. Okay. All
yeah.
right. Well, something fixed. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I agree with what you're writing on governance in Plato. It's interesting because when you look at AI and what we've been doing with C4SB and these RDF and knowledge graphs, essentially, you can get governance as part of the nodes in the system. So you can set rules that are attached to whatever we've been doing. So instead of having to read through a bunch of documents, you essentially say, okay, what's the governance for this particular outcome that we want? And you plug it in. And if you don't have that, then there's no way to check and validate. So that's interesting. And then in ancient times when Plato was around, they also had the oracle. They would go to the oracle and ask it questions too. So this whole concept of what's the truth, what's reality from a philosophical perspective, I think fits in right in with AI and this do-ocracy thing. How do we take all this complexity, keep it moving forward, having enough governance to drive it? Because if you don't have governance, then it just starts going all over the place. Everybody has their own rules. There's no society. There's no order. But you still need flexibility. So you have some flexibility, but you still have to have that kind of frame around it. So I think an interesting angle that you identified, Anto.
Thank you, Kimon. And I think we discussed on Wednesday that we may end up making March a sort of a governance themed conversation on Monday Live. So we'll come back to that. Sure.
So before we go on to today's topic, I've got some other news I wanted to bring up.
Please.
Okay, so happened to see a video over the weekend about a topic related to AI and AI data centers in particular. And that has to do with the generation of what's called infrasound. So this is sound that's below 20 hertz. Okay. And so one of the things of new technology is the fact that we often create unintended consequences. Okay. So turns out the article was all about, but that people who live near large data centers are experiencing various forms of health problems. And they were trying to figure out why. So dizziness, headaches, nausea, so on, if they're within a mile or two of the facility, and noises that create, ringing in the ears and things of that sort. Okay. And so this guy went out with a meter, an audio meter, and he was doing testing around the data centers in 3 or 4 different locations across the United States. I think one was near Memphis, one was in Texas, one was in either Nevada or Arizona. And he showed the magnitude or the intensity of the infrasound that was being generated within this 1 to 2 mile distance of a data center. And it was scary. It was scary to see it, the intensity of it. And then the question is why? Where's it coming from? Guess what? It's from our world. Some chillers, cooling towers, air handlers. Okay. So, and a data center project I've been involved with over the past year has already on it over 1,000 air handlers. Small ones, but over 1,000, and it's slated to double that number. So the sheer quantity of HVAC equipment that's being deployed out of necessity because of the magnitude of cooling that's required. The unintended consequence is now we're generating huge amounts of infrasound or sub 20 hertz noise, much of which is hard for human ears to detect, but our bodies nonetheless respond to it. And so I don't know what the answer, I'm not suggesting any answers here. I'm suggesting that there's an issue that I was totally unaware of. I don't know if anybody else has come across this, but given that this is directly related to our industry, we ought to try to learn more about it and see if it's to what degree it's legitimate, and to see if there's steps that can be taken to alleviate the problem.
Yeah, I've certainly not heard of what you're describing.
Yeah, it's the first time I heard of it. It happened to be a YouTube video and it caught my attention. And the piece that was missing was the explanation. So then when I went on and I did a Google or a chat GBT type search on the Google equivalent, what came up was specific, what is causing the infrasound was all related to our industry. It spelled out specifically chillers, cooling towers, and air handlers.
Wow.
Maybe the AI knew that's the industry you're in, and it was just annoying you.
Could be giving me the answer I wanted to hear, right? But
Right.
not really.
Yeah, but you know, it's an easy thing to check and test, right? I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think it's hard to test.
no.
The question is the relationship of that intensity of sound? Because when you think of a normal building with a couple chillers, maybe 3 or 4 chillers in the basement, cooling towers on the roof, in a large office tower, it's not significant, right?
Right.
But when you're talking about thousands or hundreds of chillers and thousands of air handlers in a relatively small space, that's a change. We aren't used to that. You know, in the way buildings have been designed,
Yeah.
we haven't seen this before. That's what I'm saying, an unintended consequence.
Yeah. Interesting.
So we should look into that. Those that are inclined to do that from a technical perspective, that would be interesting. And maybe we'll bring it up again.
Yeah.
Come back
Okay.
to this. Thank you for that.
Yep.
So one more quick thought on use, actually. Since Rick mentioned C4SB and was talking about the presentations at the booth, we actually have a session on Friday, a webinar with the Microgrid Consortium, where they invited me initially. I thought it was going to be like a 5 or 10 minute. It ends up being 90 minutes. So I brought in PAE and also Tristan from Skycentrics. This will be this Friday, 10 o'clock.
Could you put a link in chat so everybody can sign up?
Yeah, I'll do that.
That'd be great. Okay, anything else? All right, so let us move on to our topic for the day. I've been doing sort of some AI sort of perspectives the last couple of days. They've tended to be a little bit sort of scary, and so I'm not doing that today. No scary stuff today. The first thing is, saw this and I just thought this is kind of interesting. This is the adoption of AI globally. And that little red dot down there is the percentage representing people who are coding. This is basically, the red is people who are doing coding. It's just one dot, meaning there's 3.2 million people in each. Obviously, that's kind of interesting, but most people in the world have not done anything with AI, as you can see, and the green, which is like the people who have only obviously just used it on the sort of the free basis. So people who are paying is these sort of orange things. So we have a long way to go, is what this is all about.
Sorry, Anto, just to be clear though, this is people who are interacting with some sort of chatbot or initially.
Yes.
So to give you an example, I will bet you there's a huge volume of people who are interacting with AI but don't know it, that they are doing
Yes.
so. Right. I mean,
Correct.
my example.
Good point.
My wife uses Google and Gemini comes up and gives her the answers. She didn't know she was using AI. She was pretty clear that she wasn't. She said, no, I'm just using Google. Yeah. Anyway.
It's a good point, yeah. So the other thing that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is the sort of just this exponential growth. And this has been bugging me for quite a while. And really the problem that I've been trying to sort of figure out is how can you live in a world that is exponential? It just doesn't make sense because everything, multiplies every period of time that gets shorter and shorter. So eventually you're going to double or multiply by 10 every minute. That can't happen. Right, so that's kind of that the verticalness of the exponential growth is kind of really interesting, but it's not real because we can never go up that curve. Right, so, but that's kind of okay because what it's really saying is that AI compute is the thing that's going up this curve. So it is economically dramatically reducing in cost as depicted by this vertical increase. But our capability of doing business is not going to multiply by 10 every year. That's never going to happen. But what it will create is a competition to use as much of this AI as possible. That's kind of the way I think about it, right? So, and this is a saying that's been said before. If you're not using AI, your competition is going to be using AI. And what they're going to be doing is they're going to be leveraging this exponential growth, and you're not. And that's kind of the framing of the do-ocracy that I would like to contribute because that sort of links it to this exponential thing. You can't do exponential, not in most industries, but you can leverage it to get ahead of the market, ahead of your competition and other people. And that I think is sort of a really, really sort of interesting way to frame that. And would love to get everybody's thoughts. Don't have so that leads us to do-ocracy. It's kind of the way I think about it.
Well, on your exponential curve, Anto, I'm curious as to what makes anyone believe that the business model of AI itself that's going to fund the expansion of that that exponential growth is possible. Right now we're in a debt-funded race to create it, but the sustainability of that exponential growth is incumbent upon the AI companies getting business models where people will pay. If you look at your first graph, where there aren't that many dots where people are paying, unless you decide that humans, the next graph back, unless you decide that humans are irrelevant in the equation anyways. How do you get the numbers that sustain the exponential growth of the technology, let alone its applications?
I'm not sure, but they're very confident that it's going to happen. Maybe not at 10x because that's technically impossible, but even at sort of 5x a year or 3x a year.
And I don't doubt the capability of self-fulfilling prophecies coming true, but it would be nice to at least get a flavor. When the internet boomed, everyone said it would be funded by advertising. I thought that didn't make any sense at all because how could there possibly be enough advertising in the world to pay for the expansion of all technology? Seemed to happen anyways, so what the hell do I know? But this looks similar to me. I don't understand, where trillions of dollars of fresh investment come from when there aren't enough people using the technology today.
It's Keith, I think it's a little bit different now with the exponential growth, like the .com boom and the cars, automobiles.
You are breaking up quite badly, Keith.
Oh, sorry. I think that really there's this kind of active hostility toward AI. And I've been looking at articles that says that I think this exponential growth is going to be attenuated by that. So it has the potential to do that, but I think it's going to be attenuated because of the, really just we've never had a technology that's been so loved and so hated. I mean, I think it was Dr. Jeffrey Funk came out with an article on it yesterday or today, and he's just talking about just the active hatred of AI. People think it's going to destroy us, or it's going to take all the jobs away. So I think AI is going to be different because it's going to be attenuated because of the emotional, response of humans to
Was
AI.
but Keith, was that not true of the Industrial Revolution age as well, right? I mean, they all said that
Yeah,
the loom, all the automatic looms and everything else was going to take their jobs away, which it actually did.
yeah. You would die. You would die if you went over 40 miles an hour.
You
Like,
would die if you went over 40 miles an hour in the
yeah,
car, and
yeah,
so there's always going to be the group that's going to be, look for the why not, which is okay. I mean, I'm okay with that, right? I'm always in the model of I like to see a spectrum of folks, the ones who are violently for and the ones who are violently against, and you know that the answer will be somewhere in the middle as a result. But to know where the middle is, you need to know where the two ends are.
yeah. And one of the things I think that happens is because of our inability to grasp the exponential function, humans, we're going to be biased in our responses. We're never going to be like fair about it. I mean, take a look at full self-driving unsupervised. It's like, I think there was a headline that everybody's jumping on that, there was 9 accidents in Austin, Texas, since they come out. Nobody's looking at the positive that, you get 50% off your insurance if you use full self-driving. So where's the real money on it? I mean, it's
Sure.
everything that's negative gets over amplified because of this FUD, this fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So we're not very good at reporting, evenly and fairly, I don't think, because of we're human, because of our human frailties and bias.
Yeah, and where you are in that spectrum that I described earlier, right? Is it going to help you or not help you? How are you going to be? The one that my most favorite story, again, not sure if it was 100% true, but sounds like a good anecdote. Back in the day when Henry Ford apparently said if you ask the market, they will tell you I need a faster horse. As the car was coming out, the horse industry actually had government grants and funds to make faster horses, you know, which included chemicals and growth serums and food additives and all sorts of strange things. Um, and they were getting actively funded to do so,
Yeah.
because if you just want a faster horse, okay, let's just make faster horses.
But the problem with all this is when you do have those biases against these new technologies, you can't deny the objectively better performance and outcome that you're getting. Nobody can say that it's better to ride a horse to church with your family than an SUV. It's impossible. So I think that's where we kind of focus on is results of what our AI is doing as far as energy
Yes.
conservation, that sort of thing. It's objectively better, and that can't be denied.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in that same camp as you are, Keith, in that regard, right? Whenever I use it for whatever I use, it's always better than what I could have done without it. So from my perspective, why would I not use it?
I'm in that camp as well, but I still question the economics that will drive exponential growth. So I'm not, the technology is very important and is very powerful. And I concede all those things, but all I'm saying is I still don't get the math.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tim, and I don't either, because you look at the trillions of dollars being spent on data centers and technologies and stuff to drive it and memory and everything else that's driving it's just going nuts. And I'm like, yeah, where's all the numbers coming from? But to your earlier point, we are really, really bad at ever seeing what the financials are for any new innovation that comes down the pipe, right? It's one thing as a human race we do really badly. It always surprises me where the dollars comes from.
So let's think about doing the right thing, and think about doing and do-ocracy. And Rick, can you talk about do-ocracy from a Linux perspective, because it is a sort of a core principle of how things get done in the Linux Foundation?
Yeah, it is that word or made up word sort of we all heard on a couple of different occasions, starting with early conversations with the Linux Foundation, going back a couple years ago now. And but the core concept is as simple as oh gosh, now help somebody's gonna have to help me figure it out. Code talks and everything else walks or something like that. So that it's code that matters. And if there isn't some amount of code, then the assumption is that whatever it is doesn't exist. So again, the culture of where Linux came from is coders, which is, interesting group of people to begin with. But the concept is if I can't see your code, if I can't test it, try it, poke at it, then what am I supposed to do? But the do-ocracy is related to that code. Write some code, show me what the code does. Now, beyond the code, what we're trying to show is, and this is also the case in other parts of the Linux Foundation, is we're trying to show that by demonstrating what the code does when it's put in play, you can get more people's heads around it, especially people that aren't coders. Because going and looking at GitHub is really interesting for apparently a lot of people. But going and looking at what the outcomes of something is, like what Keith was describing of, oh, look at the results of what the AI is doing, or look at the results of what the code can do, actually gets a lot of additional people's heads around things. So do-ocracy from just coding and getting it in GitHub, but also now applying do-ocracy to maybe it's show-ocracy, I don't know, but so like a show what it can do is sort of the next step in that. And we have this really cool thing is, our domain is about things where a lot of the rest of the IT world is about, data that just sits in a data center somewhere, or sits on a hard drive somewhere. It's hard to get your head around code. It's not so hard to get your head around the effects of whether heating and cooling is happening correctly. So we have this convenient ability to show what is happening, and that's what we're trying to do specifically with some of the projects, like how we're highlighting everything at the PAE building, for instance, and going beyond the PAE building to others. But the concept of do it or it doesn't exist. That's where that comes from.
And it's not just about code, actually. GitHub and everything is part of that, but that's what we've been talking about. Coding is going down to zero, right? It's more about participating and testing and being involved and being transparent, plus coding. But the coding, as we discussed, is going down to zero. And one little tidbit that I can kind of add to this is years ago, as in fact this has come up over and over with our work with the government, they told us that it cost them $500,000 to add one button to an application that they use, which is the old way of doing things. And now it's going down to zero, right? If you have the right connectivity, you can essentially say, add another functionality to this app, and the app is no longer trapping you in that ecosystem to have that $500,000 per button. So that's even more than a 10x. It no longer costs $500,000 to add a button. It used to be whatever, $50, $1. Maybe it's going to go down to $0. I want to add something on the fly. That is code, but it's also not having to deal with the code. It's having to know the use case and then being able to add and create on the fly applications and functionality.
So we do that today, Kimon, to your point, right? So everything we build on UX now is all AI generated. Yeah. And it costs us, other than tokens and stuff, it costs us literally zero to add a button these days. In fact, I can do it in real time while I'm doing a user research. The interesting part about that, to your point, is adding that button. The big question is always, should I add the button? Where should I put the button? What should the button do? And I do exactly typical user research, which means I have my user researchers work with my user teams and do Figma screens and put random buttons on pages and say, is this good button? Is this a bad button? Do you like the button? Do I need to move the button? And the user research is always really poor, right? Because the user will go, yeah, it looks okay, until they put the button on the screen after, 3 months worth of development and show it to him. He goes, oh, yeah, that's not really where I wanted it. And now I can actually move the button in real time and have him interact with it in real time in a user research session, in a half an hour session, for him to go, yes, that's the perfect place for the button. So not only is it the coding piece, but it's all that user research time and effort and cycles and stuff, which is non-trivial in of itself, right?
Yeah, that's where the humans come in too. I mean, that's
where
the
the
problem.
humans come in. There's a lot of other hidden stuff that you don't quite realize,
And,
until you get
and
into it.
then you get too many requests from the humans and you end up with 50 buttons on a screen when you really need one button.
That's also true, which, by the way, is an interesting fact, which is something that we actually exposed during this process, right? In that we did that exercise, and one guy said, "I want the button here," another guy said, "The button here," and then we ended up putting two buttons, and they were fighting each other over which button was the right button. But that cycle was reduced from a typical 2-month cycle to a half-hour exercise.
Yeah. And that's the reality of development now. That's a modern way of doing it, right? But there's still kind of a lot of the legacy applications out there that are burdened with, oh, it'll take us 3 months to add a button. And I think that's the whole turning upside down of the application and software world that's happening right now. All that kind of stuff no longer makes sense. So why keep paying for that and do it that way? Unless you're trapped in that environment, which a lot of places still are. So it's unevenly spread, I guess. That 10x is unevenly spread. It's all the way from
that's true.
zero to 5,000 or whatever, and everything. It's just like the first chart that Anto showed. There's some people that haven't even touched it yet.
So does that make it harder to do stuff? Because what we're sort of saying is that it's very easy for us to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Which brings up the ocracy part. So there's the do and the ocracy part. The ocracy is this deciding whether the doing was of any value or not, and the version of what was done, was that the right thing? And that's where the do-ocracy part. The second part of that is was this version or this version the right thing? Was it valuable? But the cycling of that and the speed at which that can happen and the involvement is kind of the whole. That's the whole concept of do-ocracy. Is like you do it and you get feedback, you get involvement from a community, you get version tracking and control. You say, well, that was really dumb. Let's go back, rewind back to a previous version, and now let's start over. But that can all happen very, very quickly in this sort of structure of governance, and that's the Linux way of that kind of approach is how we feel the technology should and will advance.
So what does do-ocracy mean to you, Tracy?
I don't know. I have a thought though on some of what was just unfolding there. There's a risk here when you guys were talking about adding buttons and the cost to add buttons, and then you end up with too many buttons. One of the hardest things that we had to do when we were putting together our platform was engineer all the HVAC and controls jargon out of the user interface and make it easy to understand. So, I came up with the 2020 rule. Some of you may have heard me talk about this, but I need to teach a 20-year-old how to use this in 20 minutes or less, no documentation, right? That was the core rule for developing the UI when we did that. And I was just thinking, if coding goes to zero cost and is easy for anybody and everybody, that means it's also easier to add more and more and more functionality and capability.
Yeah,
which could be counterproductive to the outcome that you're really looking for in this whole thing, right?
Right.
That's a really good point, Tracy. It is a trap and something we've kind of managed to step in and step out of pretty quickly because it's so easy. It's like, well, can we add this? Before, I always had the counter argument. It's going to cost $100,000 to add a button. So,
just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Should do it now, right? Now it's changed the equation.
But coming back to Rick's point, now the other thing that you can do is, think about simple A/B testing where you've got one version versus another version. And now it'll be super easy to track and say which pages are most visited, which buttons are hit the most, which actions are taken most often, with these two different variations of this. So there is a closed loop kind of feedback cycle that can be created to help the ocracy side of this, of voting, public voting, if you will, just by usage statistics, right?
I like Roger's point just now in the chat. Mass customization will be possible. Everyone can pick their own buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking about going down that path, making them not just customization, but individualized.
Mhm.
You can actually make the UI for that person who has his or her specific needs.
So we have a term for that I invented, I think. I don't know. We call it the persona-less persona.
Okay.
Exactly that. I no longer have personas. I have people. And you think about them, and the reason we created personas in the first place, which was actually a creation by Microsoft decades ago, was that we were trying to be all things to all people. And so, I can't remember the guy's name, and he created the term persona to say, well, this is the real group of people that we're looking for. We can't be all things to all people. We're technically going the other way per Roger.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think of all of this Do-ocracy?
What do I think about all of it? I think what I guess we've hit on the point just a second ago about the mass customization. Complexity breeds, in my view, contempt. So the ability to do anything you want, whenever you want, means that ultimately you struggle to keep anybody satisfied, and you're going to be spending a lot of time, even as easy as this stuff in theory is to implement, because of the freeness of coding. It's still you still have to deal with the individuals involved. You still have to spend time with them. You have to understand what it is they want. Or can you really give them the tools to do it themselves? Maybe in some cases, but in a lot of cases, no. So, at the end of the day, I like keep it simple, stupid, as much as possible, just from a logistical standpoint. And yeah, I think being able to do wonderful things, because I just look at the software packages I use to manage my inventory and particularly my inventory. There are so many different possible options, and I've got to figure out where in the software those options are set up. And it's great that the options are there, but I'm not an expert in the software, and so when I need one of those options, I have to go dive in. And in most cases, I've got to go into a chat session with the vendor to figure out what it is I needed to do. All right. So what's the answer? And I guess from my standpoint, I think the easiest answer is to have a service provider where I just communicate, I want this and this, go do it.
So that's actually an interesting point, Steve. I was thinking about the same thing, right? Is it going to get towards the place where the analogy I get is like my wife and I recently wanted to redo our master bathroom, right? I can get on a piece of paper, and she got on a piece of paper, and here's what I want, and here's what she wants, and
right.
Neither of us are designers, and we both came up with pieces of crap, right? So in the end of the day, we commissioned a designer to come in, and she could do whatever we wanted. She did, and she came up with the right thing. So I'm wondering if we're going to get into the same space with, if you can be anything to anybody, is there going to be another whole genre of designers who are going to come in and say, Steve, I'll put together the pieces you specifically want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think we're headed for a world where you can do anything you want with excellent defaults. right?
Right.
So if somebody has cleverly figured out what the zeroth order application is, and that just happens naturally, or the first, second, and third order on top of that, but you can still do the complex stuff when you have that strange case. To me, that's where we're going. But
Yeah.
it's still, I mean, if you look at Steve Jobs and his ability to distill down the user interface of an iPhone, I mean, there's a lot of research and work that went into that. And
Right.
if we can have, that kind of interface with excellent defaults when it gets complicated, and when it gets really complicated and to a 10th order weird thing you need to do, it's great if you have the flexibility to do it. But for your average Joe, they shouldn't have to encounter it in their lives.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I agree, Jim.
Isn't that what we're kind of stuck talking about the user experience from the human perspective? AI doesn't care about complexity and data. It actually likes the complexity as long as there's some structure to find stuff. So there's two parts of this, right? Humans like simple interfaces. AI, actually, that all that goes away in some ways. You don't need an interface, like Keith talks about a lot of times too. It just goes for the data, and the more data, as long as it's semantically more or less correct, it can find that path. But we still have to kind of layer in, well, how do humans interact with that? And that's where we get these single button prompts from ChatGPT. You can talk to all the AI in the background, but you're not understand everything. In fact, we can't understand everything.
I think one of the values of it is that it allows us to quickly get to a demonstration. And we grew up in a time when, a picture was 1,000 words, but I think a demonstration is an essay. And the fact that some of the stuff the folks are doing, the Do-ocrats are doing, is beyond belief. And for us to actually see that demonstration, it can completely change our mindset. Like we kind of go into it thinking it did this, and they show us a different way of doing it because it's a better fleshed out demonstration. So I think that the demonstration portion of them just going ahead and doing what's inside their mind and painting that out, it's like, oh my God, I never even thought of coming at it from that angle. And there's just a lot of radical change that's coming that we need to.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ken, and to support your argument, and I do a very much do it and put a demo together here, than put any PowerPoint presentation, business analysis.
That's right.
People don't have time to read. They don't read. They don't want to
But
read.
is that a demo? I think that we're sort of describing a different kind of behavior.
Yeah.
It's not a demo because a demo was purposely done to show and not to operate, right? But what we're doing is
we call them prototypes now.
Prototypes, okay. Yeah. But they can be created quickly, and the whole vision can come out of one person's mind, and he can give it back to you, and you can then kind of grasp what he's talking about, and then you can probably help him make it better. It's a method of communication.
So what does do-ocracy? Those are very sort of specific things. We're talking about UIs, and there's obviously lots of other things. What do you think do-ocracy means, Ken, in terms of how people in this industry should do? What should they do, and how should they do?
They should do it. Don't try and explain. What I like it, if we take it back to bureaucracy, a whole bunch of people doing nothing. Here we have like one person doing something, and they're basically creating their thought. They're getting their thought out there. They're actually having something that we all can interact with. And I think that's the value of it, is we start to shift the whole mindset from the way we've organized ourselves with bureaucracies. He who does it best wins, and also commands somebody like Anno's attention. Is if I can spin a good do for you, and you look at it and you say, that's interesting. It would be nice if it did this, and the guy says, I can make it do that. I think it's a new method of communicating. It's just doing it. Don't Don't try and do all the politics of winning the people over. Just
Yeah.
physically do what
Yeah.
it is you think you should do. So get you to the end result quicker.
I think one thing that kind of aligns with this is like has been really and I've adopted it. I'm not the only one, but the Scrum process in agile development, agile software development. I'm a big fan of the CTO of Spotify, and he always talked about why you couldn't get any traction and movement and stuff to market very fast. He talked about A/B testing and all that stuff, but he also talked about the culture of being always between bureaucracy and chaos. And he was like, either one is going to kill you, but at least if I'm going to die, I'd rather die fast and get it over with a quick death.
Fail
Because
fast.
bureaucracy is like getting pecked to death by pigeons. You're going to suffer. So he was always talking about it, and that's really what the Scrum process came out of, was a self-organizing team that wants to fail fast and get results very quickly. And I really used that as like a mandate for the way I structured my teams for decades. I've been doing agile software development for decades, and I mean, yeah, you basically have to have it when the ocracy part, when you have a committee of 20 people trying to design an interface, like that's just a mess. So I mean, there's actually a structure along with the agile process, Scrum process, that whole thing, moving away from the bureaucratic, waterfall process of which nobody even does anymore. So
I agree with you 100%, Keith. And in fact, in our model, we're going to what we're calling the hyper Scrum model, right? The tools are letting you do, Scrums used to be a month with 2 weeks, 1 week, and now what can you do in a couple of days?
I learned that early on, Anto. We had 1 week Scrums because I started with 2 weeks, and then I gave them 3 weeks, and they're like goldfish. They're going to expand as big as the bowl you give them.
Yeah, don't go that way.
I was like 1 week, and then there's a term that is often used, and it's not so much, I don't think, a do-ocracy, because you have to have some person in charge that's kind of like the president or final authority, and that person's name title is the benevolent dictator. Like that's what the process is. So I mean, my teams, they kind of hated me because I was like this benevolent dictator, but I'm a good dictator. I'm going to keep you on track. We're going to keep moving, and we're going to keep producing.
The Steve Jobs.
I don't think it's a bureaucracy, or it's actually closer to democracy, because in Greek, it's demos. Demos is the people. Kratos is power, rule, strength. It's strength of the people. It's a democracy. A bureaucracy is one. It's kind of, you don't have access to the power or the information. So I think democracy is closer to do-ocracy than bureaucracy, I think.
I like the comment about, fail early, fail fast. I think that was a Steve Jobs quote. I probably haven't got it quite right, but I think the essence of it was there. And I think that's what I think that's what bureaucracy allows us to do, is it allows me to blurt out an idea, and the people say, you're absolutely insane, or they'll say, wow, that's interesting. And it's not just done from a one point. It's done from an actual working model.
Well, and I mentioned it, I think, a few weeks ago, the difference between NASA and SpaceX. Like NASA was well-structured, bureaucratic, they got to the moon, or you could do it like Elon Musk and let's just blow a bunch of rockets up and we're going to learn every time. So that's his goal, is to, like, people are laughing, oh, look, he blew up another one and they're doing this countdown on YouTube. You don't get it. He's learning very fast.
Right. Is SpaceX a do-ocracy?
Very much. He just gets
very much so.
I'd say so. Yeah. I'd say it's the essence of a do-ocracy.
He'll blow stuff up just to learn from it.
I'm not sure there's an ocracy though. That's sort of it's more of a. I think there's one person making the decisions as to whether it worked or not. But I got to. Awesome stuff. I got to go.
Yeah, we got to wrap. It's the right time. So thank you. This has been good conversation. I'll get the video up on YouTube, and hope everybody has a great week. And we'll start hopefully talking about governance next month.
Okay. Anto, can you stay on for a second?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, bye all.
Yeah.
All right.